Hi, I'm Brian Ives from Beasley Media Group, and I'm the host of How I Wrote That Song. This series is a group effort between us, BMI, HD Radio, and we're powered by Yeti mics. Thank you, Yeti. So today we're talking to singer-songwriter Parker McCollum. You know his songs Pretty Heart, Hell of a Year, and I Can't Breathe. And you know, a lot of the singers you hear on the radio, they don't write their own songs, and that's okay. But Parker is equal parts singer and songwriter. Parker, thank you so much for joining us. So let's just jump into it then. Pretty Heart is definitely a gateway song to you. I think a lot of people heard of you first through Pretty Heart. Talk about you and Randy Montana writing it, and what the song is about, where you were at when you were writing it.
I had never really co-written before in my life. I'd written those first two albums pretty much on my own, and but that first day I wanted to go in with something that was like super heavy, like really have a good idea. And I didn't have anything at the time. I really wasn't writing anything good. I didn't feel like at the time. And so I'd been going through my notes, and I'd been going through old videos, just kind of me sitting around the house playing and looking for a melody, something to take in. And I was actually scrolling way back on my Instagram from like 2014, and I found a video of me singing, what does that say about me? I could love somebody like you. And I thought, and I was like, how in the world did I forget about that melody and that line? And that line, the whole line didn't make it into the song, which I still love that line. I was kind of bummed about that. But I just remember I stumbled across it, and I was like, this is it right here. So I go in the next day, and Randy and I are good buddies now. At the time, we had never met, never hung out, anything. And so I went in and I kind of sang that for him, and his eyes kind of lit up, and he was like, man, let's chase that. And he's got a really unique way of asking me all the questions that I don't want to answer, but he like pulls those things out of me, like things I'm thinking that I don't want to say. And so we just sat there. That was a quick one. A lot of times those writes will take, sometimes your whole day, which I'm not a fan of. And that one, 2 hours, the song was done. I mean, and we were writing the chorus, and he brought up the Pretty Heart line, and I was like, what if it was heart? His eyes lit up again, and he was like, dude, that is it. And he was like, don't touch it. Don't mess with it. It's like, that's the song. And it's really funny because we wrote the song, and I loved that melody and that original line, that I could love somebody like you. So when I left that day, the co-write, I was like, man, we ruined that song. I was like, that is not good at all. It's terrible. Truly, that was my opinion. But I just put it in the vault and didn't think much of it. And we were going to cut some demos for the label. With a producer I was wanting to use named John Randall. Now he's produced that last EP and this full album that comes out this summer. And we go in and cut demos, and the first song we did was Pretty Hard in the demo session. And I went and sang vocals the next day, and I remember singing vocals, and I was like, this song is dope. Like, I was so wrong. I was like, this thing deserves. I need to really give this thing some more love. And that demo that day is the song. We never like officially cut it for the record. Like that is the track that's out. And so it's wild to see it go platinum and gold and number one. It's so crazy to me that was the one that did that, because I would not have picked it. So I'm glad I was wrong.
Tell me about I Can't Breathe. How, where, like, that obviously is a very different tone than Pretty Heart. Where were you at? And talk about the writing of that one.
Yeah, I Can't Breathe. Oh, man. There's another thing. There's a band out of Texas called Mickey and the Motorcars that I was a big fan of growing up. And that's when I was playing, like, Sunday nights at midnight, the Saxon Pub on South Lamar in Austin, and for just absolutely nobody. And Mickey Braun, from lead singer of the Motorcars, had actually stayed late one night for my set. It was about him and 4 other people there. And I saw him in the back. I was only probably 22 or 23 at the time, and saw him in the back, and I was kind of like, man, that's cool. He stuck around and listened to and wasn't talking to anybody. He was standing there leaning up against the bar listening to my songs. And I got done, and he was like, hey man, you're really good. I'd like to, if you ever want to write a song, let me know. I had never really co-written before. That was one of the very first times, kind of like the Randy one. And so of course I go home, and he shot me a text, and he was like, hey, can you come over on this date? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And so I was actually sat on the coffee table. There's a video on my Instagram, if you scroll way back, of the night that I came up with I Can't Breathe chorus. And the hook and the melody, it's very different than what it ended up being. It's a lot faster. But I just sat down, and that's the very first thing that came out. And I was like, man, maybe that's good enough. And took it in, and we wrote the first half, and then it was like a year or two. We never messed with it again. And I was in the studio. Lloyd Maines was producing that record, and I played him that, and he was like, "You need to finish that right now. We're going to cut that. That has to go on this record." So I called Mickey and I was like, "Hey dude, finish that second verse, finish the bridge, text me what it is. I'll cut it." Not thinking anything of it. I really particularly, again, wasn't a big fan of the song. And then once we finished it and cut it, I was like, "This thing's badass." And so that's actually why I named that record Probably Wrong. Because most of the time when I write songs and think they're bad, I'm like, it's really bad, but probably wrong.
Wow. And again, like you just said, you didn't see it coming, but that's the one that like changed things for you.
Yeah.
The song, I mean, just the title, Hell of a Year, obviously resonates for everybody right now because we've all had a hell of a year. But I think that is from 2017 or 18.
Correct.
So, talk about that one. There's one line in it, "You can't sleep alone and you ain't sleeping with me," is like, that line hurts every time I hear it. But talk about writing that line in that song.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about that song now and just kind of how I was living at the time I wrote that song. It was not a great lifestyle. But I wrote that song about the year 2017. It was like 2:00 in the morning. I was in the Whataburger fast food drive-through in Austin, Texas. And I was really going through it at the time. It was way before I had met Hallie Ray, my girlfriend now. And it was just really like almost self-sabotage at the time, trying to write that record and like intentionally make myself in a very bad, dark place to write those songs. And it worked really well back then. It doesn't really work anymore. And so I was kind of like right place, right time mentally for that song to pop out. And I was on my phone and I wrote, "It's been a hell of a year. How did you see who I was? Ain't who I was going to be." And I was kind of like, okay. And I wrote that chorus and that first verse, and then just got my food, went home, ate it, went to bed. And the next morning woke up and just kind of was thinking about that whole year, everything, every song on those first two records and on this last EP I put out. I lived those 100%. They're very honest. They're very real. Would change the story a little bit here and there, maybe to make the listener feel sorry for the singer. I think that's a great dynamic in a song, right? If they're just sitting there like, they believe it a lot, I think. And that's really what it's all about when you're writing songs, is making them feel something. So, our show's big and fast and loud, and that song just sucks it all right down into that moment. It's really cool. It's taken on like a new meaning through the last 12 months, which I say, I'm like, that's every songwriter's dream for a song to be relevant twice. So it's cool. And it's still a staple in the show. And as soon as that little acoustic lick starts, they lose it. And it's a great feeling.
So then there's To Be Loved by You, which you co-wrote with Rhett Atkins. And in that one, you had the line, "Why do you sleep alone when I know you don't like it?"
It was like a year and a half ago, maybe. I don't know. And I had my merch guy, Lane Peace, with me. He was riding my truck, and we were about to go on the road. We were like 10 minutes from being at the bus. And Hallie Ray, my girlfriend, and I were kind of going through it a little bit at the time. And I'd kind of said out loud, what does a man have to do to be loved by that girl? And Lane was like, "I don't know, but you should write that down." And most of the time people say that, they're very wrong, right? People all the time are like, "Oh, that's a song." You can be like, "My shoe's untied." And they'll be like, "Oh, it's a song right there." And right. But that time he was, and I was like, "Okay, I will." And I didn't write it down. I usually don't write stuff down. And I got on the back of the bus. When we got to the bus, I got in my little Baby Martin and got in the back lounge. And I didn't write anything down. I just completely freestyled that first verse and chorus, hit record on the iPhone. Exactly how it came out is what's on the record. The first time I ever sang any of it, it just blah. And he was sitting there and he was like, and I just looked at him and I was like, "That's not bad." And that's really how I write all my songs, is just completely freestyling, trying to find a good melody on guitar and just rambling lyrics. And that time it just came out in order and made sense. And paused the recording and went on the road that weekend, played the shows, and I was in Nashville the next week, and or maybe the week after. And I had to write with Rhett, and I was not in the mood to write that day. I really was kind of burnt out on co-writing, and I don't really like it anyways. And I sat down and I was like, "Man, I just wrote this last week," and played him the recording, and he was like, his eyes kind of lit up, and we wrote the second verse, and he was like, don't touch it, don't mess with it, just leave it right there. I was like, all right. Didn't think much of it. And then we went to the studio, and from the very first take that we did cutting it, I was like, yes, it felt so good. And I felt like it was one of the few times that what I was trying to say, I really got it all in. I didn't record a song and be like, oh man, I kind of left this out, or I didn't think about this. Had none of those feelings with that song. And I think it's like top 40 on the radio now. So crazy.
So one last song, then let's talk about Drinkin. And the line in that really got me is, got the life I wanted and he got you. And I guess that's a double-edged sword of being a touring musician. Like, you worked hard to get to where you can be paying a band and paying roadies to go out on the road and go out with Dirks and whatever. But the cost of that is like, you're not around at home and other people are still there. You
have a great person in your life and you just completely throw it away and throw it out the window to continue because you can't, you loved this first, right? You knew music before you knew anybody else. And that's really the inspiration behind that line and that whole song, really. So that song came out of another one of those nights of probably doing things I shouldn't be doing, trying to write sad country songs.
I know you're touring with Dirks, but what's the next year hold for you?
Man, we got a new album coming out this summer. The Dirks tour, 20-something shows, starting at the end of July. We're headlining Dos Equis Pavilion in Dallas, which I actually saw John Mayer there when I was like 20 years old. Be our biggest headlining show ever. And so to play that stage that I saw him, that was on the Born and Raised tour, I think. And I was super into that album. So to get to play that same stage will be insane, and to headline it and not be opening for anybody will be really cool. Hopefully we have another big hit on the radio by the end of the year and To Be Loved by You.
And it sounded like from what you were saying before, you already have at least one song for the next record or EP or whatever the next thing might be.
Yeah, I started writing the new album. We finished and sequenced and mastered the album last week, and I started writing the next one yesterday.
Thank you so much for giving us the time. We'll catch everybody else next time on How I Wrote That Song.